Talking about Ohio State's 2023 recruiting class, guys that stand out that we're particularly interested in. Nathan Baird, Doug Lesmerises, Stephen Means. Stephen, who's a guy that you think really is going to have an impact for Ohio State?
Brandon Innes, that's their only 5-star, number 29 player, number 5 overall wide receiver. I think he's a dude, and we did not see a freshman wide receiver take that step and insert himself into any type of a role this year, whether it was on special teams or as an actual wide receiver, the way we've seen with Emeka, Marvin, Garrett, Jackson probably would have played more if it had been a normal season. I mean, even Julian Fleming played in that Big Ten championship game. We didn't see that this year, and I think Brandon Innes can come in here and immediately carve out a role for himself, even if it's the Emeka Ibuka plan where he's their starting kick returner. That's a guy you just want – put the ball in his hands, and let's see what happens. I think he is in the same mode as Emeka and Garrett, where he might start out here, but then he might move in the slot. He might be an X. He might be a Z. You just want to get the ball into that guy's hands. And so that's of all the – it's not just because he's a 5-star. It's because that's a guy who literally since he was a freshman has been one of those guys where just get the ball in his hands. I know I keep saying that, but that's – you always need guys like that, especially in an offense like this, where you can be as creative as possible in how you want to play them.
Only 5-star in the class, potential instant impact. It's one of those things. Sometimes on signing day, you can get caught up in the guys who didn't sign. It's like, don't take for granted that Brandon Innes has been committed to the Buckeyes for a long time and did not go anywhere and is going to make an impact in Columbus. Nathan Baird, who you got?
So for a team that has 2 All-American offensive tackles right now, and a consensus All-American offensive tackle, we've spent a lot of time in the last year talking about how bad this tackle situation could be in the future, and as early as next year. So Luke Montgomery is the most high-profile offensive lineman in this class, an in-state guy, and a guy who Ryan Day was asked today by you, is it someone who can come in and compete right away? I would be surprised if he could come in and compete for a starting job right away, but I think it's important that he comes in and competes right away because we've seen some examples in recent years. I'm thinking back to 2019. Ohio State had Nicholas Petit-Frere, who was a much higher-rated prospect, but he battled to get the starting right tackle job that year and didn't get it. Brandon Bowen ended up winning, but at least there was a very talented guy there pushing a veteran for something more. And we've seen other examples of that in the past. And I think if Luke Montgomery can come in and just sort of help elevate the level of play at that position. We still don't even know. Does he stick at left tackle long term? Ryan Day said he's going to start at tackle. We'll see what his fit is. Is he the left tackle of the future? We don't know. I think it's a little hard to project that right now. But Ohio State's looking at portal guys. If that doesn't work out, they've got a couple of guys in-house that are not necessarily highly ranked guys and who are, a lot could be asked from as early as next year. Does Montgomery come in and help just push those guys to be better than they would be otherwise?
I think the Petit-Frere example is interesting. I don't know if they have a guy as established and veteran as Brandon Bowen. Then the next Paris Johnson came and competed, but he was competing with Nicholas Petit-Frere, who was a third-year 5-star at that point. It's like, well, I mean, I think if Paris Johnson was coming as a freshman, it'd be like, well, he's going to start next year. They're going to try to get a tackle in the portal, but Ryan Day said they're not putting a cap on Luke Montgomery. I don't know. We've spent hours on the Buckeye Talk podcast talking about what's their tackle situation going to be in 2023. I think Luke Montgomery is on the list of solutions. It's a lot to ask of a true freshman, but he's on the list. I'm going to go with Jermaine Matthews because I like camp stories. So this is an Ohio kid, comes this summer, right, impresses in camp. Ryan Day on signing day is talking about it's hot and it's sweaty. And they're like, oh, my gosh, Jermaine Matthews, make sure he doesn't pass out. And Jermaine Matthews keeps fighting and playing hard and showing what he can do. Then he goes and has a great senior year. He rockets up the recruiting rankings. And the result is you have an in-state guy who is now a top 200 national recruit that a lot of people came after. But Ohio State didn't wait. Right, Stephen? They said, this guy had a great camp. Let's get him in the class. We don't care what his ranking is. And Ryan Day, in a world where it's crazy out there, Ryan Day talked about Ohio guys today. And usually I'm yelling at people on the podcast saying you can't build a national champion with all Ohio guys, but you got to have a mix of Ohio guys. I think there's 7 Ohio guys in this class. I like stories like that, Stephen. They didn't wait. They didn't try to get 7 other national guys first and then double back on him after he was committed to Kentucky and have to flip him. They got him early. They showed him love. He returned the love. He had a great senior year. People came after him. Other schools did, and he said, I'm not going anywhere. And now all of a sudden you feel like you have a potential impact, homegrown dude who came to a camp in Columbus and earned it. That gets me right there, Stephen.
Sounds like Terry McLaurin and Darren Lee to me. I mean, that's the thing they pitched to him because it goes back even further than that. He wasn't going to go to that camp. because they were kind of slow playing him as an Ohio kid for a little bit, and he had decided, you know what, I'm not camping. These are my offers. I'm sticking with them, and that's just going to be that. Tim Walton called him up and was like, listen, come camp. I promise you to be worth it. I promise you to be worth it. And then he comes out here on this field across from us right now, and he was a dude. I think he had the best performance I've seen from a camper in the 4 or 5 years I've been on this beat now. And we always talk about the guys who might outplay their ranking immediately when they show up. Kai Stokes seems to be on that trail. Marvin Harrison Jr. clearly should have been a 5-star recruit.
Denzel Burke did that.
Denzel Burke did the same. Keep an eye out for Jermaine Matthews, because if there is a freshman in that secondary who I think might push for playing time, and especially push those older guys who didn't really prove anything, that's the guy to keep an eye on.
It's a good class. There's interesting guys. They address some needs. We're going to talk about it in the Buckeye Talk podcast. We're going to write about it at cleveland.com/OSU. Try the text. Hey, it's the playoff. Get in on that. 614-350-3315 for Nathan Baird and Stephen Means. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and thanks for watching us on Buckeye Talk Videos.